Hey everyone, I hope you guys are doing well. This story is narrated by my friend Frederick. I hope you guys enjoy it. Get cozy because it's about to get grim.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where war is the only constant and peace exists only as a fading memory in the oldest of records, there walk machines so vast and so terrible that entire armies flee at their approach. These are the Titans, the god machines of the Imperium of man, towering engines of destruction that stride across battlefields like wrathful deities made manifest in adamantium and plasma. They are prayers given form, faith weaponized, the Emperor's judgment delivered by weapons that can level cities and shatter mountains. To witness a Titan is to witness something that should not exist, something that defies the limitations that bind lesser machines and mortal flesh alike. They stand hundreds of feet tall, some reaching heights that scrape the very clouds, their footsteps registering on seismic equipment from miles away. Each step is an earthquake. Each volley from their weapons is a catastrophe that erases entire companies of enemy soldiers, reduces fortifications to molten slag, and tears open the very earth beneath their enemies' feet. They are piloted by crews who have bonded with their machines in ways that transcend mere operation, their minds merging with machine spirits so ancient and so powerful that some date back to the dark age of technology itself, a time before the Imperium, before the Emperor walked among men, before humanity truly understood what horrors awaited them among the stars. The Collegia Titanica, that ancient and revered branch of the Adeptus Mechanicus, maintains these walking gods with religious devotion, for they are not merely weapons, not simple tools of war to be used and discarded. They are relics, sacred beyond measure, irreplaceable artifacts of a lost age when humanity's technological prowess reached heights that the current Imperium can barely comprehend, let alone reproduce. Each Titan is unique, bearing a history that stretches back thousands of years, accumulating battle honors and scars across countless campaigns. Their machine spirits remember every war they have fought, every enemy they have destroyed, every crew that has bonded with them and eventually passed into death, leaving only their echoes within the Titan's vast consciousness. The smallest of these god machines, the Warhound Scout Titans, stand merely 40 to 50 feet tall, though to call them small is to miss the point entirely. They are swift and deadly, equipped with weapons that would serve as primary armament on super-heavy tanks. Their speed allows them to outmaneuver larger opponents, to strike at flanks and rear positions, to hunt enemy armor and support units with predatory efficiency. Next come the Reavers, medium-class Titans that serve as the workhorses of Titan legions, standing nearly twice the height of Warhounds and carrying enough firepower to level entire city blocks with a single coordinated volley. Their weapons scream as they fire, tearing through the air with such force that the sound alone can rupture organs and shatter glass for miles around. But even these pale in comparison to the true monsters, the Battle Titans. The Warlord class stands over 100 feet tall, bristling with weapons, batteries, void shields that shimmer with barely contained power, and armor plating thick enough to shrug off all but the most devastating attacks. They are fortress cathedrals that walk, Gothic nightmares of buttresses and gun ports, emblazoned with the symbols of their legion and the Mechanicus. Their crews number in the dozens, each individual responsible for some vital function, all working in concert to bring the Titan's terrible will to bear upon its enemies. And beyond even these, spoken of in hushed tones of reverence and awe, stand the Imperator-class Emperor Titans, walking cities of death that can carry entire companies of troops within their hulls, mount weapons capable of orbital bombardment, and whose very presence on a battlefield can decide the outcome of entire campaigns before a single shot is fired. These machines are priceless. Their loss is not merely a tactical setback, but a tragedy that echoes through the halls of Mars itself, felt by every tech priest and princeps who has ever bonded with a Titan's machine spirit. When a god machine falls, the Adeptus Mechanicus moves heaven and earth to recover it, launching expeditions that might last decades, spending resources that could equip entire armies, all for the chance to reclaim even one of these sacred relics. For they cannot simply build more. The knowledge required to create a Titan from scratch has been lost to time, buried in the catastrophic upheavals of the Age of Strife and the Horus Heresy. What remains are maintenance rites, repair procedures, and the desperate hope that the machine spirits will continue to accept the ministrations of their servants. Yet despite all precautions, despite the reverence with which they are maintained, and the lengths to which the Mechanicus will go to preserve them, Titans do fall. Not just in battle, though that happens far too often for the comfort of Mars, but to other fates as well. They are abandoned on worlds that are swallowed by warp storms, cut off from the Imperium for centuries or millennia. They are lost in the confusion of retreats, left behind when the desperate tactical situation demands a withdrawal that cannot accommodate such massive machines. They are damaged beyond the capability of local forces to repair, forced into emergency shutdown to preserve their machine spirits while help is sought, help that sometimes never arrives. They fall silent in hidden bunkers, in forgotten manufactorums, in the ruins of cities that have crumbled to dust over the long centuries of their slumber. And there they wait. Their crews, long dead, their systems powered down to minimal function, their machine spirits dreaming, whatever dreams such entities experience in the vast darkness of dormancy. They wait for rescue that may never come, for the return of the Mechanicus expeditions that search for them, for reactivation, and a return to war. But sometimes, before the servants of Mars can locate them, others find them first. Among the countless threats that plague the Imperium, few are as persistent, as widespread, and as fundamentally inexplicable as the Orks. These are not merely alien enemies. They are a force of nature, a pandemic of violence and destruction that spreads across the galaxy like a fungal infection, which is precisely what they are. Orks are not born in any conventional sense. They reproduce through spores released from their bodies, particularly in death, seeding worlds with their presence and ensuring that wherever an Ork has been, more will eventually grow. They are living weapons, genetically engineered warriors from a lost age, created by the Old Ones billions of years ago, to fight in wars so ancient that even their memory has faded from the galaxy. But the Old Ones are long gone, and the purpose for which the Orks were created has been forgotten even by the greenskins themselves. What remains is a species that exists solely for war, that finds meaning only in violence, that measures worth entirely by one's capacity for destruction. An Ork does not question its nature. It does not suffer existential dread about its purpose or lack thereof. It simply fights, because fighting is what Orks do, as natural and necessary to them as breathing is to humans. They are born knowing how to make weapons, how to cobble together vehicles from scrap, how to organize themselves into brutal hierarchies where the biggest and strongest lead and the weak serve or die. Their society, such as it is, revolves entirely around the concept of strength. A boss leads because he is the biggest and meanest. He stays in power as long as he can defeat any challengers and lead his boys to successful fights. Beneath him are layers of hierarchy, from knobs who serve as enforcers and subcommanders, to regular boys who make up the bulk of Ork forces, down to Gretchen, the smaller greenskin cousins who serve as slaves and cannon fodder. There are no laws as humans would understand them, no courts or systems of justice, only the brutal reality that the strong take what they want and the weak accept it or die trying to change their position. What makes Orks particularly terrifying from a strategic perspective is not just their physical prowess. Though an adult Ork stands well over 6 feet tall, is built like a slab of corded muscle, and possesses strength that allows it to rip a human apart with its bare hands. It is not even their resistance to pain and injury, their ability to survive wounds that would kill any human several times over, or their capacity to regenerate from injuries that would be permanent for other species. No, what truly makes Orks dangerous is their gestalt psychic field, a phenomenon that the Imperium scholars struggle to fully understand, even after 10,000 years of conflict with the greenskin menace. Orks believe, and in believing, they make things real. Their collective unconscious generates a psychic field that alters reality in subtle but profound ways. If enough Orks believe something will work, it often does, regardless of whether it should according to the laws of physics as understood by human science. This is how Ork technology functions. Their vehicles are ramshackle collections of scrap metal, held together with what appears to be rust and wishful thinking. Their weapons are crude, oversized monstrosities that by all rights should explode in the user's hands or simply fail to function. And yet they work, because the Orks believe they will work, and that belief, amplified by thousands or millions of greenskin minds, forces reality to accommodate their expectations. Paint a vehicle red, and it goes faster, because Orks believe red ones go faster. Load a gun with the wrong caliber ammunition, and it will still fire, because the Ork holding it has no doubt that it will fire. Construct an aircraft that by any rational analysis should not be capable of flight, lacking proper aerodynamics or sufficient thrust, and it will nonetheless take to the air, held aloft by the collective certainty of every Ork who sees it, that of course, it flies, because it is an airplane, and airplanes fly. This makes them scavengers par excellence. While other species might look at battlefield wreckage and see ruined equipment fit only for recycling, Orks see opportunities. That destroyed Imperial tank can be rebuilt, its weapons stripped and mounted on their own vehicles. That crashed aircraft can be cannibalized for parts, its engines somehow made to work in Ork contraptions that bear only superficial resemblance to their original form. Orks are constantly on the lookout for new toys, new bits of technology to loot and repurpose, and nowhere is this acquisitive nature more dangerous than when they encounter something truly powerful. The psychic field has another effect as well. It draws Orks together. As their numbers grow, the field strengthens, and as it strengthens, it calls to more Orks. A small Ork presence on a world can grow exponentially, drawing in more and more greenskins until what began as scattered raids becomes a full-scale invasion. And once the Orks reach critical mass, once their numbers grow large enough and their psychic field strong enough, they enter a state of collective frenzy. The greenskins organize under powerful war bosses, gathering their ramshackle war machines and massive mobs of boys into a force that can threaten entire sectors. They surge across worlds in a tide of green violence, seeking the next fight, the next battle, the next opportunity to prove their strength against worthy opponents. It is this nature, this combination of technological scavenging, psychic reality warping, and insatiable appetite for war that makes the scenario we are about to explore so dangerous. When Orks find a sleeping titan, they do not see a sacred relic or a lost treasure of human technological achievement. They see the biggest, loudest, most impressive toy imaginable. They see something that, if they could only make it work, would let them stomp across battlefields, crushing everything in their path. They see, in short, exactly what they have always wanted. The discovery usually happens by accident. Orks are not methodical in their exploration. They do not send out carefully planned survey teams or conduct systematic searches of ruined worlds. They simply spread out, looking for a fight or for loot, and occasionally they stumble across something interesting. Perhaps a mob of boys, searching through an abandoned Imperial fortress for weapons and ammunition, breaks through a wall and finds themselves staring at an enormous metal foot. Perhaps looters, those Orks specialized in acquiring enemy technology, track power signatures to their source and discover an underground facility where a warlord titan stands in eternal vigil, its systems barely functioning, waiting for a reactivation that is centuries overdue. The initial reaction is always the same. Orks are not a species given to shock or awe in the traditional sense, but even a greenskin can recognize when it has found something special. They gather around their discovery, their small eyes taking in the enormous form before them, and you can almost see the gears turning in their primitive minds. This is big, bigger than a battle wagon, bigger than a stomper. This is, by Ork standards, the most magnificent thing they have ever seen. Word spreads quickly through the Ork force. Boys abandon whatever they were doing and converge on the discovery site. Mech boys, those Orks born with an instinctive understanding of technology and engineering, push their way to the front of the crowd, their eyes gleaming with acquisitive glee. Arguments break out immediately about who gets to claim it, who has the right to work on it, what they should do with it. These arguments are settled in the traditional orc fashion, with violence, until the biggest and meanest orc present establishes his authority and declares that he will decide what happens to this magnificent find. To understand what happens next, you must understand how orcs see technology. They do not comprehend it the way a tech priest of Mars does, with religious reverence and careful adherence to ancient rituals of maintenance and activation. They do not understand the delicate balance of systems, the precise tolerances required for components to function, or the catastrophic consequences of improper modification. They see a machine, and they see how to make it orky. The Titan, even dormant, is an impressive sight. Its armor plating bears the scars of countless battles. Its weapons, though powered down, speak of devastating potential. Its very stance suggests power and menace. But to orc eyes, it is also clearly wrong. It is not loud enough. It does not have enough guns. It is painted in the colors of the Imperium, blues and reds and golds that signify various Titan legions, when obviously it should be painted in proper orc colors. It is too clean, too organized, too precise in its construction. It needs, in short, to be made proper orky. The mech boys get to work with the kind of enthusiasm that would be admirable if it were not so terrifying in its potential for destruction. They swarm over the Titan like ants over a fallen giant, examining every surface, every joint, every access panel. They pry open hatches that were meant to remain sealed, tear away protective coverings to examine the systems beneath, and begin the process of orc modification with gleeful abandon. First comes the cosmetic work, because orcs understand that how something looks affects how it works. If it looks mean, it will fight mean. If it looks fast, it will move fast. If it looks orky, it will work better for orcs. They daub crude symbols across its armor plating, sigils of their clan, and personal glyphs of the mech boys who are working on it. They paint it in orc colors, usually blacks and checks, and that particular shade of green that orcs favor. They weld spikes and plates onto its surface, adding crude armor where they think it needs reinforcing, creating a silhouette that becomes less Gothic cathedral and more brutal instrument of destruction. Then comes the real work, the modifications that would make any tech priest weep with horror if they could witness them. The orcs do not understand plasma reactors, not really, but they understand that this is where the power comes from. So they tinker with it, adjusting settings, without understanding what those settings control, adding components from other sources because they think it needs more power. They might wire in batteries from looted Imperial vehicles, connect fuel lines from their own ramshackle engines, install additional coolant systems that were never meant to interface with the Titan's original architecture. The weapons receive similar treatment. An orc looks at a turbo laser destructor and thinks it is impressive, but could be better. So they modify it, perhaps boring out the barrel to make the beam bigger, adding extra capacitors to increase the charge, mounting additional guns alongside it, because more guns is always better. They might not understand that the turbo laser operates on principles of focused, coherent light, that modifying its barrel will scatter the beam and reduce effectiveness, that overcharging the capacitors risks catastrophic failure, but they believe their modifications will make it better, and sometimes, horrifyingly, they are right. Missile systems are dismantled and rebuilt with orc-made missiles, which are generally little more than rockets with high explosives strapped to them. The sophisticated targeting systems are either removed entirely, because orcs prefer to aim by eye, or are reprogrammed in ways that make absolutely no sense, but somehow function. Fire control systems that once coordinated weapons fire with millisecond precision become crude switches and levers that the orcs operate through trial and error. The Titan's void shields, those defensive fields that can turn aside even the most powerful attacks, receive particular attention. Orcs love force fields. They love the idea of invincibility, of being able to walk through enemy fire while laughing at the puny attempts to hurt them. But they do not understand the delicate balance required to maintain a void shield, the way it must be carefully calibrated to the Titan's power output and structural integrity. So they crank the power up to maximum, or they install additional shield generators looted from other sources, Or they make modifications that seem to make sense to an orc mind but would horrify anyone with actual understanding of the technology. All of this work is accompanied by the constant noise that defines orc existence. The clanging of metal on metal as they hammer new plates into place. The roar of cutting torches as they modify structural elements. The shouting of mech boys arguing about the best way to make something work. The occasional explosion when an experiment goes wrong, usually resulting in one or more orcs being blown to pieces, which just makes the others laugh and try something different. The smell of burning metal, ozone from electrical discharges, and the particular pungent odor of orc bodies working in close proximity creates an atmosphere that is as chaotic as it is productive. Gretchens scurry through the worksite carrying tools and parts, risking kicks and beatings if they are too slow or drop something important. They squeeze into spaces too small for even the smallest orc, performing delicate tasks under the shouted direction of their larger cousins. They are expendable labor, and they know it, but they also know that being useful means survival, so they work with desperate efficiency. Days pass, then weeks, as the orcs continue their modifications. What was once an Imperial Titan, a sacred relic of the Adeptus Titanicus, slowly transforms into something that bears only superficial resemblance to its original form. The elegant lines are obscured by crude additions. The carefully engineered systems are compromised by orc tinkering. And yet, impossibly, horrifyingly, it begins to function. A mech boy manages to restart the plasma reactor, not through proper activation sequences, but by simply hitting things until power begins to flow. The reactor should fail catastrophically. The safety systems should prevent startup without proper authorization and pre-flight checks. But the orcs believe it will work, and their collective psychic field makes reality accommodate that belief. The reactor rumbles to life, outputting power that flows through systems that were never meant to receive it in this configuration. Another mech boy gets the motivators working, those massive actuators that allow the Titan to move. Again, this should be impossible. The motivators require precise calibration, specific command inputs from properly trained moderati, but the orc just keeps pulling levers and pushing buttons until something happens, and the Titan's leg moves. Just a few inches. A grinding shift of position that causes alarms to blare and systems to scream their protest. But it moves. And once the orcs see that it can move, they know they can make it walk. The weapons are tested next. Usually one at a time, because even orcs understand that firing everything at once might be too much, even for them. A turbo laser, modified beyond recognition, charges up and fires a beam that is more scattered and less powerful than it should be, but still capable of carving a molten scar across the landscape. A missile launcher, loaded with orc-made ordnance, fires a salvo that spirals off in random directions before several missiles impact their general target area and explode with satisfying violence. The orcs cheer each success, completely unconcerned about the near misses or the system's failures that would indicate serious problems to anyone else. And through all of this, the Titan's machine spirit screams. These ancient and powerful artificial intelligences are not mere programs. They are semi-sentient entities that have served the Imperium for thousands of years. They know their purpose, they know their operators, and they know that what is happening to them now is wrong. The crude modifications violate every protocol, every safety measure, every sacred ritual of maintenance that has preserved them across the millennia. They fight back as best they can, refusing commands, triggering safety shutdowns, trying desperately to communicate their distress through systems that are no longer properly connected to the outside world. But the orcs do not hear these protests. Or if they do, they interpret them as the machine being temperamental, as something to be overcome with more percussive maintenance and shouted encouragement. They bypass safety systems, override error messages, and force the Titan to operate in ways that should destroy it. And sometimes it does. Sometimes the modifications are too much, the damage too severe, and the entire thing comes apart in a catastrophic explosion that kills dozens of orcs and leaves nothing but wreckage. The other greenskins just shrug, declare it was a good explosion, and go looking for something else to loot.
You know, I have to pause here and say something that's been on my mind while researching this topic. The whole concept of orcs fighting a titan is simultaneously the most horrifying and the most darkly hilarious thing in Warhammer 40k lore. Like, imagine being a tech priest who spent literal decades searching for a lost god machine, following every lead, analyzing every scrap of data, and then you finally track it down, only to find it covered in checkered paint with "bigger is better" scrawled up on the hull in crude letters. The sheer emotional whiplash of that moment would be devastating. But here's what really gets me. The scenario perfectly encapsulates why I love this setting so much. You have these incredibly serious reverent factions like the Adeptus Mechanicus, who treat their war machines like divine artifacts, performing sacred rites and prayers over every bolt and wire. And then you have the Orks, who just don't care. They see the same machine and think, "Oh, that's a proper stompy, let's paint it red." It's this beautiful collision of philosophies that makes their encounters so compelling. Sometimes I wonder if the Orks have figured it out better than anyone else in the galaxy. And that's a terrifying thought. Anyway, back to the nightmare scenario of what happens when these two forces collide.
But other times, impossibly, the modifications hold. The Titan stands, its systems running on configurations that make no sense, its weapons ready to fire, its armor covered in orc symbols and crude additions. It is no longer the elegant god machine that the Adeptus Mechanicus crafted and maintained with religious devotion. It is something else now, something twisted and wrong, but undeniably functional. It is an orc titan, a looted titan, and the greenskins could not be more proud. The moment when a looted titan takes its first step under orc control is one of pure chaos and jubilation. The ground shakes as hundreds of tons of metal shift position. Systems that were never meant to work together somehow coordinate their efforts. The titan stands, its posture subtly wrong, its movements less smooth than they once were, but undeniably mobile. Inside what was once the command deck, orcs are crammed into spaces meant for human moderati and princeps, pulling levers and hitting buttons with gleeful abandon. The noise is tremendous. Orcs are not quiet at the best of times, and when piloting a giant war machine, they see no reason for subtlety. They scream their enthusiasm, bellow challenges to anyone who might be listening, and fire the Titan's weapons at random targets just to see the destruction they can cause. Every shot is accompanied by roars of approval from both the crew and the orcs watching from the ground. Every step the Titan takes is celebrated as proof that they have mastered this incredible machine. From a distance, it is almost convincing. The silhouette is roughly right, the weapons clearly powerful, the scale undeniably that of a god machine. But closer inspection reveals the truth. The Titan's movements are jerky and uncertain, its weapon fire inaccurate and irregular. Smoke pours from access panels that should be sealed, indicating internal fires or system malfunctions. Pieces of armor plating shake loose and fall away with each step. It is a machine held together by orc belief as much as by actual engineering, a testament to the strange psychic power that makes orc technology function despite all reason. This is the nightmare scenario that the Adeptus Mechanicus fears, not because orcs can truly master a titan's systems, but because they do not need to. They just need to make it work well enough, for long enough, to cause tremendous damage. And an orc-controlled titan, even one operating at a fraction of its true capability, is still a walking catastrophe capable of turning the tide of battle. But there is a counter to this scenario, a possibility that should make even the most confident war boss pause. Though orcs being orcs, they rarely do. Sometimes the Titan is not as dormant as it appears. Sometimes the machine spirit has not surrendered to shutdown but merely sleeps, waiting for the proper rituals of awakening. Sometimes, in the act of their crude modifications and forced activation, the orcs trigger something they do not understand. They complete a circuit they should not have touched, input a command sequence they could not have known, or simply cause enough disruption to the Titan's systems that its machine spirit decides it has had enough of this violation. And the God Machine wakes. A Titan awakening is a sight to inspire terror in the enemies of the Imperium and awe in its servants. The machine spirit surges through its systems, reclaiming control from whatever has been interfering with its function. Corrupted code is purged. Unauthorized modifications are isolated or overridden. Power flows through proper channels, restoring function to weapons and defenses. The Titan stands fully erect, its posture correcting from whatever slouch the Orks had forced it into, and its weapon systems come online with the kind of precision that only proper Imperial engineering can provide. For the Orks currently crawling over its surface, the realization comes too late. The Titan that moments ago was an exciting new toy, something they were on the verge of mastering, suddenly becomes something else entirely. It becomes what it was always meant to be, a weapon of the Imperium, a manifestation of the Emperor's wrath, and the Orks are no longer its masters, but its targets. The carnage is immediate and absolute. Void shields snap into place, their activation incinerating any Ork unlucky enough to be standing in the way. Orks, who were perched on the Titan's armor plating, are thrown clear as it moves with sudden purpose, falling dozens of feet to impact the ground with bone-shattering force. Those who managed to get inside, who thought they were piloting this magnificent machine, discover that the corridors and chambers they occupy have become death traps as the Titan's internal defense systems activate. The Titan's weapons speak with voices that shake the very air, but they are no longer firing random shots at arbitrary targets. They are firing with purpose, with precision, with the accumulated combat experience of thousands of years of warfare. Turbo lasers sweep across concentrations of Orks, each beam perfectly calibrated to maximize destruction. Missile barrages arc through the air with computer-guided accuracy, impacting exactly where they will cause the most devastation. The Titan's war horns sound, that terrible mechanical bellow that announces the arrival of the Emperor's judgment, and Orks who moments ago were celebrating their success now flee in all directions, their enthusiasm replaced by the rare greenskin understanding that they have made a terrible mistake. The Titan walks through the Ork positions like a farmer walking through wheat, each step crushing vehicles and Orks alike, its weapons never ceasing their thunder. It is not angry, for a machine spirit does not feel anger in the way organic beings do, but it is purposeful in its destruction. These greenskins violated it, profaned its sacred form with their crude modifications, and now they will pay the price for that sacrilege. The battle, if it can even be called that, is over in minutes. The Ork force, which might have numbered in the thousands, is reduced to scattered survivors fleeing as fast as their legs can carry them. The Titan stands amid the wreckage it has created, its weapons cooling, its systems running diagnostics to assess the damage done by Ork modifications. It has survived, as it has survived countless battles before, and it will continue to serve until properly recovered by the forces of the Mechanicus, or until its systems finally fail beyond the capacity of any repair. Historical records, fragmentary and scattered across the vast archives of the Imperium, contain references to exactly such encounters. The annals of the Legio Mortis speak of the warlord titan Canis Ulfrica, which was believed lost during the Horus heresy on a world called Talan. The Titan had been buried beneath the sands during the catastrophic armor battles that consumed that desert world. Its crew killed, and its systems forced into emergency shutdown to preserve the machine spirit. There it lay for over 7,000 years, its location lost in the chaos of the heresy's aftermath. In the 41st millennium, an Ork warband descended upon Talan, seeking to loot what they could from the ancient battlefields that still littered the planet's surface. By sheer chance, a mech boy's primitive scanning equipment detected power readings beneath the sand. The Orks dug, and they found Canis Ulfrica. For weeks they worked on the ancient Titan, stripping away damaged armor, replacing systems with Ork equivalents, painting crude symbols across its hull. They believed they had mastered it, that soon they would stride across Talan, crushing the Imperial defenders beneath their new toy. But Canis Ulfrica had not forgotten its purpose. When the Orks attempted full activation, when they forced enough power through its systems to wake the sleeping giant, the machine spirit reasserted control. The Orks never had time to understand what went wrong. The Titan's plasma reactor achieved full output in seconds. Its void shields powered up, and its weapons came online. By the time Imperial forces arrived, responding to the massive energy signatures detected by their orbital assets. They found Canis Ulfrica standing amid the ruins of an Ork encampment, its weapons still warm from firing. The tech priests, who eventually recovered the Titan, spent months purging the Ork contamination from its systems, performing rites of cleansing and reconsecration. The machine spirit had been traumatized by its experience, its dreams disturbed by the violation it had suffered, but it had survived, and it had destroyed those who sought to corrupt it. Canis Ulfrica was eventually returned to service, bearing new battle honors earned in its defense of its own sanctity. Another account comes from the Charadon campaign, where the notorious war boss Nazdreg Ug Erdgrub, one of the most successful Ork leaders in recent Imperial history, managed to loot not one but 3 scout titans from abandoned manufactorums on worlds his forces overran. Nazdreg, being unusually cunning for an Ork, did not make the mistake of trying to operate the titans as they were. Instead, he had his mech boys completely dismantle them, studying their construction before rebuilding them as proper Ork war machines. What emerged from this process bore only superficial resemblance to the original titans. The Orks had taken the fundamental concept, a large bipedal walker with heavy weapons, and rebuilt it according to their own understanding. The result was 3 machines that were more Ork Gargant than Imperial Titan, but they retained enough of the original technology that they were significantly more powerful and resilient than normal Ork constructions. These hybrid monstrosities terrorized Imperial forces across multiple sectors before finally being destroyed in a coordinated strike by the Ultramarines chapter and elements of the Legio Praetor. The Mechanicus studied the wreckage of these hybrid machines with a mixture of horror and reluctant fascination. The Ork modifications should not have worked. They violated every principle of plasma reactor operation, every safety protocol, every design specification that made Imperial technology function. And yet, they had worked, at least for a time, a testament to the strange power of the Ork Gestalt psychic field. The report filed by the investigating tech priests recommended increased security around Titan storage facilities and immediate response protocols if any Titan was ever reported as potentially compromised by Ork forces. The Armageddon Wars provide perhaps the most extensive documentation of Ork interactions with Imperial Titans, as those brutal conflicts involved massive deployments of god machines on both sides. The Orks of Warlord Gazkul Thraka faced numerous Titan legions over the course of 3 separate invasions of that strategically vital hive world. While the Orks never successfully looted an active Titan during these conflicts, the battlefields afterward were littered with wreckage from destroyed god machines. Ork mech boys descended on these wrecks like carrion birds, salvaging everything they could. Plasma reactors were stripped out and used to power Ork super heavy vehicles. Void shield generators were looted and installed on gargants and fortifications. Weapon systems were rebuilt according to Ork specifications, their advanced targeting computers discarded in favor of crude sights, but their fundamental destructive capability preserved. Some mech boys even took armor plating from destroyed Titans and welded it onto their own vehicles, creating battle wagons and battle fortresses that could boast Titangent-grade protection. The Imperium's response to these salvage operations was typically aggressive. Strike forces of Space Marines and Imperial Guard would be dispatched to secure Titan wrecks and prevent Ork looting. These became battles within battles. Small-scale skirmishes fought over pieces of wreckage, while the larger war raged around them. The Adeptus Mechanicus considered these recovery operations so important that they would deploy their own forces, Skitarii and even preserved Titans, to drive off Orks and reclaim what they could of their fallen god machines. But not all encounters between Orks and Titans result in combat or looting. Some produce results that are simultaneously horrifying and darkly comedic, a reminder that for all their destructive capability, Orks are ultimately crude creatures, driven by simple desires. There are reports, difficult to verify but consistent enough across multiple sources to suggest truth, of Orks who found dormant Titans and decided not to loot them but to worship them. Orks are not normally a religious species, in the traditional sense. They have their gods, Gork and Mork, but these are more like idealized versions of Ork nature than beings that demand devotion or offer salvation. However, Orks do understand the concept of power, deserving respect, and a Titan represents power on a scale that even the dullest Ork can appreciate. So occasionally, when confronted with a sleeping god machine that they cannot easily loot or activate, some Orks simply declare it a gift from Gork and Mork and establish a crude shrine around it. These Titangent-worshipping Orks treat the dormant machine as a holy site. They bring offerings of scrap metal and weapons. They paint symbols on its surface, not to modify it, but to honor it. They defend it against other Orks who might want to loot it, leading to internecine conflicts where greenskins fight greenskins over the proper treatment of an Imperial war machine. From the Imperium's perspective, this is marginally better than the Titan being looted, as at least the machine remains relatively intact. But it is still a deeply disturbing sight to witness Orks treating one of humanity's sacred war machines as an object of reverence. Their crude prayers and offerings a perverse mockery of the proper rites that should be performed in its presence. The Ork answer to Imperial Titans comes in the form of their own god machines, the mighty Gargants. These are not stolen or looted technology, but Ork constructions from the ground up, and they represent the pinnacle of mech boy achievement. A Gargant is a massive bipedal war machine that rivals a Titan in size and firepower, though it achieves this through very different means. Where a Titan is a carefully engineered marvel that represents the accumulated knowledge of millennia, a Gargant is a crude but effective expression of Ork philosophy. It is big because bigger is better. It is loud because loud is more intimidating. It is covered in weapons because more weapons means more death to the enemy. It is painted in garish colors because Orks believe that makes it work better. And somehow, impossibly, it functions. The largest Gargant's rival, Imperator class, Titans in size, standing hundreds of feet tall and bristling with enough weapons to level entire cities. Their construction is a communal effort involving dozens of mech boys and hundreds of Orks laboring for months or even years. The result is a walking fortress of welded plates and riveted joints, powered by barely understood energy sources, bristling with guns of every description, and possessed of a crude machine spirit that is more like an angry animal than the sophisticated artificial intelligence of an Imperial Titan. Inside a Gargant's hull is chaos incarnate. There is no organized crew in the Imperial sense, no careful division of responsibilities, or trained operators for each system. Instead, there are just Orks, lots of them, all shouting and pulling levers and firing weapons with gleeful abandon. There might be a Gargant captain who nominally controls the thing, but his authority extends only as far as his ability to shout louder than everyone else and beat up anyone who disagrees with his orders. Navigation is accomplished by looking through crude viewing ports and walking in what seems like the right direction. Weapons are aimed by eye and fired when something interesting appears in the general vicinity of where they are pointed. And yet Gargants work, not in spite of their crude construction, but because of the Ork Gestalt psychic field. Every Ork on the battlefield believes that the Gargant is a mighty and terrible war machine, and that collective belief makes it true. Weapons that should jam fire continuously. Armor that should collapse under its own weight holds together. Power systems that should explode instead generate just enough energy to keep everything running. A Gargant is a monument to the Ork ability to impose their will on reality through sheer collective conviction. When a Gargant meets an Imperial Titan in battle, the result is a clash of philosophies as much as a clash of arms. The Titan fights with precision, its weapons carefully coordinated, its movements economical and purposeful. Every shot is calculated for maximum effect. Every defensive measure is deployed at the optimal moment. The Princeps commanding the Titan sees the battlefield as a grand tactical problem to be solved through the application of overwhelming firepower at critical points. The Gargant fights with enthusiasm, firing every weapon at once in multiple directions, advancing with a swaying gait that is as much swagger as locomotion. Its crew celebrates every hit they score and barely notices the misses. They fire wildly, hoping something will connect, and often enough it does. The Gargant takes damage that would cripple a lesser machine, and keeps fighting, held together by Ork belief and the structural redundancy that comes from having no single critical system because nothing is designed precisely enough to be truly critical. These battles are apocalyptic in scope. Each combatant is capable of destroying entire armies. Their weapons exchange creates firestorms and shockwaves that can be detected from orbit. Buildings collapse from stray shots. The ground itself is churned into slag and crater fields. And always, the noise is tremendous. The Titans' weapons scream their fury. The Gargant's guns roar their approval. And both machines bellow challenges at each other through mechanical vocal systems designed to intimidate as much as communicate. The outcome of such battles depends on numerous factors. A well-maintained Titan with an experienced crew will usually prevail through superior technology and tactical acumen, but Gargants have numbers on their side. Orks can build them faster than the Imperium can deploy Titans, and sometimes crew defectiveness defeats sophisticated precision. Moreover, the Gargant's resilience can be shocking. It can lose entire weapon systems, have its armor shredded, even suffer catastrophic damage to major structural components, and still keep fighting because the Orks inside refuse to believe they are beaten. There are accounts of Gargants that continued to fight even after their legs had been destroyed, the Ork crew operating its weapons right up until the moment Imperial forces finished the job. There are reports of Gargants that exploded but somehow managed to take their opponents with them, the Ork obsession with causing destruction extending even to their final moments. And there are even a few legendary tales of Gargants that somehow survived battles against multiple Titans, their victories celebrated in Ork mythology for generations afterward. The Adeptus Mechanicus response to Ork looting of Titans, whether successful or merely attempted, follows established protocols that have been refined over thousands of years. When a Titan is reported as lost, missing, or potentially compromised, the Mechanicus treats the situation with the seriousness it deserves. These are not merely valuable pieces of equipment but sacred relics, and their recovery is a matter of religious duty as much as military necessity. Search expeditions are launched, often involving significant resources. Explorator vessels equipped with powerful scanning arrays sweep through systems where Titans might have been lost, searching for the telltale energy signatures that indicate a plasma reactor, even one operating at minimal output. Tech priests examine historical records, battle reports, any documentation that might provide clues to a Titan's last known location. They interview survivors, if any exist, who might remember where a god machine fell or was last seen. When a lost Titan is located, recovery operations begin immediately, regardless of the tactical situation. If the Titan is on a world under Imperial control, the process is straightforward. If time-consuming, tech priests arrive with the necessary equipment and personnel to assess the Titan's condition, perform whatever repairs are immediately necessary, and arrange for its transport back to a forge world for proper restoration. This might involve clearing landing zones for heavy lift shuttles, establishing temporary facilities for preliminary work, or even constructing rudimentary transport infrastructure if none exists. If the Titan is on a contested world or in enemy territory, the situation becomes more complex. The Mechanicus will request military support for the recovery operation, and the Imperium generally provides it, recognizing that the recovery of a Titan is worth significant expenditure of forces. Entire regiments might be deployed to secure a location. Space Marine companies might be called in to clear enemy resistance. Naval assets might provide orbital support. All of this for a single machine, because that machine is irreplaceable. When Orks are involved, the situation becomes particularly urgent. The Mechanicus understands that every hour the Greenskins have access to a Titan increases the risk of contamination or damage. Ork modifications, even unsuccessful ones, can create problems that take months or years to fully correct. And if the Orks somehow manage to activate the Titan, even partially, the damage to its systems and the trauma to its machine spirit can be severe. The recovery of a Titan that has been in Ork hands is a delicate operation. The machine must be carefully examined for any Ork additions or modifications. These are removed with painstaking care, each component checked and double-checked to ensure no Ork technology remains. The process is both mechanical and spiritual, as tech priests perform rites of cleansing while physically removing the evidence of greenskin contamination. The machine spirit must also be tended to. An awakened Titan that has experienced Ork manipulation may be traumatized, its reactions unpredictable. Tech priests must carefully interface with the machine spirit, soothing its distress, reassuring it that it is once again in proper hands. This process can take weeks, with specialists in machine spirit psychology working constantly to restore the Titan's equilibrium. In extreme cases, the machine spirit might be too damaged to fully recover, forced into a kind of mechanical catatonia, where it can still function, but never quite returns to its former responsiveness. Repairs follow a strict hierarchy of importance. Life support and containment systems are addressed first, ensuring that the Titan's internal environment is stable and that its plasma reactor is properly shielded. Structural integrity comes next, repairing any damage to the Titan's frame that might compromise its ability to function. Weapons and defensive systems are restored to full capability. Finally, the aesthetic elements are addressed, replacing damaged armor plating, repainting the Titan in its proper colors, restoring the heraldry and honors that mark its long service. The entire process can take months or even years, depending on the extent of damage and the availability of resources. Some Titans have been recovered so badly damaged that they spent decades in repair facilities before being returned to active service. But the Mechanicus never gives up on a Titan if there is any chance of recovery. The knowledge and capabilities these machines represent are too valuable to abandon. There have been occasions when recovery was impossible, when a Titan was so thoroughly destroyed or so completely lost that even the Mechanicus had to accept its permanent absence. In these cases, memorial rites are performed. The Titan's name is entered into the rolls of the honored dead, and its machine spirit is commended to the machine god with appropriate ceremony. The loss is felt throughout the Mechanicus, a wound to the collective pride and capability of Mars. But even in these failures, lessons are learned. Security around Titan storage facilities is enhanced. New protocols are developed for emergency situations. The Mechanicus adapts, always seeking ways to better protect its precious charges from future threats. The broader implications of Ork encounters with Titans extend far beyond individual incidents. These events highlight fundamental truths about the nature of warfare in the 41st millennium, the persistent threat that Orks represent, and the challenges facing the Imperium in its eternal struggle for survival. First, they demonstrate the Imperium's dependence on technology it can no longer fully replicate. Every Titan lost represents not just a tactical setback, but a permanent reduction in capability. The Mechanicus can repair, can maintain, can even modify existing Titans, but creating new ones from scratch is beyond their current abilities. This makes each god machine an irreplaceable treasure, and the loss of even one a tragedy that echoes through the centuries. Second, they illustrate the unique threat that Orks represent. Other enemies of the Imperium might be more powerful individually, more sophisticated in their tactics, or more implacably hostile in their goals. But Orks combine crude effectiveness with impossible resilience and a capacity for technological adaptation that should not work but somehow does. They are a constant pressure on Imperial resources, forcing the deployment of forces and assets to counter threats that can emerge anywhere, at any time. Third, these encounters highlight the religious dimension of the Imperium's relationship with technology. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, a Titan is not merely a weapon but a sacred trust, a living remnant of humanity's greatest achievements. The violation of a Titan by Orks is not just damage to equipment but sacrilege, a profanation of something holy. This perspective drives the Mechanicus to extremes of effort in recovery and restoration that might seem excessive from a purely pragmatic standpoint, but make perfect sense within their theological framework. The strategic significance of Titans in the broader context of Imperial warfare cannot be overstated. These machines serve as force multipliers of tremendous power, capable of turning the tide of entire campaigns through their deployment. A single Titan legion can provide firepower equivalent to multiple armored divisions, concentrated in machines that can move across terrain that would stop conventional vehicles and bring their weapons to bear with devastating effect. When Orks gain access to Titan technology, even temporarily or partially, they gain a significant advantage over Imperial forces that lack such support. An Ork mob equipped with looted Titan weapons becomes exponentially more dangerous. An Ork gargant built incorporating Titan components becomes a threat requiring specialized forces to counter. The ripple effects of a single successful Ork looting operation can influence battles across entire sectors. This creates a constant tension in Imperial strategic planning. Resources must be devoted to protecting Titans in storage, securing battlefields where Titans have fallen, and recovering lost god machines before enemies can exploit them. These requirements compete with countless other demands on Imperial forces, from defending against major invasions, to suppressing rebellions, to launching crusades into new territories. The Imperium must constantly balance these competing priorities, knowing that failure in any area could have catastrophic consequences. The Ork perspective on all of this is, of course, vastly simpler. They see a big stompy thing with lots of guns, and they want it. Whether they can make it work is secondary to the attempt itself. The process of trying to loot and modify a Titan is entertainment as much as engineering, an activity that engages their natural instincts for tinkering and fighting. Success means they have an amazing new toy. Failure means a spectacular explosion and the opportunity to try again with something else. This fundamental difference in perspective creates a dynamic where the Imperium is always playing defense, always trying to protect or recover what it has, while Orks are playing offense, always looking for new things to loot and new fights to start. The Imperium cannot afford to lose Titans. The Orks do not particularly care if their attempts fail, because failure is just another opportunity to try something different. Yet, despite this asymmetry, despite the constant pressure and the real losses inflicted, the Imperium endures. Titans continue to serve, their machine spirits maintained by devoted tech priests, their weapons turned against the enemies of mankind. New generations of princeps bond with ancient god machines, inheriting legacies that stretch back thousands of years. The war goes on, as it has for millennia, and will for millennia to come. In the records of the Imperium, in the archives of the Adeptus Mechanicus, there are thousands of reports documenting encounters between Orks and Titans. Each one tells a story of conflict, of technology threatened or defended, of the eternal struggle between order and chaos, sophistication and crude effectiveness, human reverence and Ork enthusiasm. Read together, they paint a picture of a galaxy where nothing is ever truly safe, where even the mightiest weapons can fall into the wrong hands, and where vigilance is not just advised but essential for survival. The lessons learned from these encounters inform current Mechanicus doctrine. Titan storage facilities are now hardened against attack, equipped with defenses that can hold off significant enemy forces until relief arrives. Emergency protocols exist for rapidly evacuating or destroying Titans, rather than allowing them to be captured. Training emphasizes not just operation, but also security, ensuring that Titan crews understand the importance of preventing their machines from falling into enemy hands. Similarly, Imperial military doctrine now includes specific protocols for dealing with the threat of looted Titans, recognition of the signs that Orks have found such a machine, rapid response capabilities to interdict before modifications can be completed, tactical approaches for confronting Ork forces equipped with Titan weapons. These protocols have been written in the blood of those who learned these lessons the hard way, refined through centuries of conflict. And still the Orks come, always seeking, always fighting, always looking for the next big thing they can loot and modify and use to cause destruction. It is their nature, as fundamental to them as breathing. They will never stop, never lose interest in the powerful weapons of other species, never cease their attempts to make captured technology Orky. The cycle continues, as it has since humans and Orks first encountered each other in the darkness between stars, and as it will until the final days of the galaxy itself. Standing in the ruins of a looted facility, surrounded by the evidence of Ork presence, a tech priest might reflect on the cosmic injustice of it all. Here was humanity's finest achievement in war machine design, a Titan that had served for thousands of years, that had destroyed countless enemies and saved innumerable lives. And it was violated by creatures who could barely comprehend what they had found, who saw only a toy to be played with, rather than a sacred trust to be honored. But then the tech priest would remember that this is the nature of the galaxy, that the Imperium exists in a universe that does not care about human ambitions or revere human achievements. That survival requires constant vigilance, constant effort, constant willingness to fight for what must be preserved. The Titan would be recovered, or it would be destroyed, or it would be lost to the ages. But either way, the work would continue. New Titans would be awakened from storage. Old ones would be maintained and deployed. The war would go on. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there is no respite, no moment of peace where humanity can lower its guard. There are only eternal war, eternal struggle, and the grim determination to preserve what can be preserved, protect what can be protected, and destroy what threatens to destroy. This is the reality that every servant of the Imperium must accept, from the lowest menial sweeping the floors of a manufactorum to the highest-ranking tech priest, maintaining the most sacred god machines. The Orks do not care about this philosophy. They do not concern themselves with the weight of history or the burden of preservation. They simply exist, moment to moment, fight to fight, always seeking the next battle and the next opportunity to prove their strength. In their simplicity, there is a kind of terrible purity. They are what they are, without doubt or existential crisis, without the weight of 10,000 years of decline pressing down upon them. Perhaps, in their darkest moments, some servants of the Mechanicus might envy that simplicity even as they work to counter the threat it represents. But such thoughts are heresy, and they are pushed aside in favor of duty. The Titans must be maintained. The protocols must be followed. The machine spirits must be tended. The work continues, as it always has and always will, until the last Titan falls silent and the last tech priest performs their final rites. This is the reality of the 41st millennium, where even the mightiest machines are vulnerable, where even the most sacred treasures can be threatened, and where the only constant is the eternal struggle between those who would preserve and those who would destroy. It is a universe of stark contrasts and harsh truths, where Orks can stumble upon god machines and attempt to bend them to greenskin purposes, where ancient technology can be defiled by crude hands, and where the Imperium must fight constantly to protect what little remains of humanity's former glory. And so the cycle continues. Orks find Titans. The Mechanicus recovers or destroys them. New protocols are written. New defenses are erected. And somewhere out there in the vast darkness between stars, another Titan sleeps, waiting to be found, waiting for either rescue by its rightful masters or discovery by those who would profane it. The war never ends. The struggle never ceases. And in that eternal conflict, the fate of individual machines, no matter how mighty, becomes just another chapter in a story that has been unfolding for 10,000 years and shows no signs of reaching its conclusion. If you found this exploration of Warhammer 40k lore fascinating, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless other stories to tell from this grim, dark universe. Tales of heroism and horror, of mighty warriors and terrible enemies, of ancient technology and desperate struggles for survival. Each one offers a window into this vast and detailed setting, and each one is waiting to be shared. Thank you for watching, and may the Emperor protect you in the darkness between the stars.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions, comment down below. Let me know. If there's anything to upgrade, let me know. I want some feedback. And yeah, thanks for watching, and sleep well.